From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Our next author was raised in a place that sounds like the perfect place for an author to be raised, Rich Square, North Carolina, where she was the 9th of 10 children. And I think those two things probably go a long way towards informing her work. Rich Square sounds like a fertile place for a writer to grow, and if you're the 9th of 10 children, you probably have a lot of stories that you hear. A poet, an author, a playwright, a producer, and an agent. At one time, she was a very successful agent. She's the co-author of Dick Gregory's memoir, Callus on My Soul, as well as the award-winning author of several books for young readers, including The Legend of Buddy Bush, a National Book Award finalist. Dred Scott and The Baptism are other books of hers. In her new book, Joseph's Grace, published by Simon & Schuster, the title character is about to begin his sophomore year when his father asks him to move in with his aunt to escape from his mother's drug problems and the dangerous people she associates with. The efforts to keep Joseph safe end in tragedy. I think maybe we should ask her about that book today. Maybe she'll talk about it. When I was reading The Legend of Buddy Bush, I was struck by a line that the young girl who's writing the book says, "Yes, I hid the truth. A lot of truth is hidden around here. If only the trees could talk or the dirt could sing." Sheila Moses gives voice to trees and dirt and all sorts of other things, so please join me in welcoming Sheila Moses.
Hello, DC. How are ya? I'm honored to be here today. This is my third time being invited to the National Book Festival, and each time I come, I must admit I'm like a little kid in a candy store searching for books, not candy. I just ran into Terry McMillan in the press room, and I knew I was in trouble with my audience when I saw Terry and I reading at the same time. But you know what? I'm standing on the shoulders of writers like Terry McMillan and Rita Dove and Toni Morrison, and if I'm going to lose my audience to someone, I'll let it be Terry. So thank you all for being here, and I'll tell Terry that some of you like me a little better than her, but she's a great author, and I'm just so glad to be in your presence. And thank you for coming out in the bad weather. Again, I am from a little place in the middle of nowhere, Rick Square, North Carolina, but he left out Rehoboth Road. And Rehoboth Road is off of Bryantown Road in between Combo Road and Potty Casey. So I know you know exactly where that is. She made a face. Do you know where that is? Okay. But I started writing when I was 6 years old. And what I knew for sure at 6 years old is that my grandmother, her name was Babe Jones, and she could not read and she could not write, but she could tell a great story. And one of her stories was The Legend of Buddy Bush. And Babe Jones said on the front porch of her house that we called Jones property, "Old Buddy Bush got away from the clan, we never see him no more." I was thinking, who in the heck is Buddy Bush? And she told that story over and over as she was hitting the mosquitoes and burning hay in the old bucket to keep the snakes away. And then she'd tell the story of the Hanks. Anybody know what a Hank is? Oh, come on, somebody over 50. What's a Hank? A ghost. She'd tell the ghost stories of Rehoboth Road. But the story that stayed in my heart and stayed in my mind was Buddy Bush. So when I started to write, one of the first stories I wanted to tell was who was Goodwin Buddy Bush. Buddy Bush was an African-American man who had just come home from the war, and he was walking down the street in Rick Square, North Carolina on a Friday afternoon on his way to the movie theater. And Buddy Bush was minding his business, and a young white lady passed him, and his shoulder touched her shoulder. And her story was that he tried to rape her. He was put in jail, and 2 days later, the Klan showed up at the jailhouse, broke Buddy Bush out of the jail. You know, this mic is killing me. Can I have a, I can't do this. Can I have a mic? I'm sorry, forgive me. Okay, I'm sorry. That's better. Okay, I like to talk to my folks. That's better. Okay, Buddy Bush was accused of raping a white woman in 1947. He was put in jail, and the Klan showed up 2 nights later and took Buddy Bush out of Jackson County Jail and put him in the back seat of their car. Their intent was to hang Buddy Bush. Well, as my grandmother said, old Buddy Bush got away from the Klan and we didn't never see him no more. And what was interesting to me was the fact that they put him in the car on the right side, didn't lock the door, he slid across the seat, he got out of the car and he made it to the swamp, and he hid in the swamp for 2 days until he was rescued by a man named Mr. Creasy. Well, how did Shelia Moses get involved in this story that happened 12 years before she was born? Well, it's nothing like a good fiction book of lies, and I decided I wanted Uncle Buddy to be my uncle. So in this book, Patty Mae Shields is actually Shelia P. Moses. And what happened to Shelia P. Moses and Buddy Bush started on a Sunday morning when he arrived on Rehoboth Road. It was a Sunday when my Uncle Buddy arrived. Ma let me stay home from church. My big sister and brother had to usher, so off they went. Me, I stayed home to lay eyes on him for the first time. His car was blue, sky blue, a Cadillac, a new Cadillac. His suit was blue too, dark blue, with pinstripes. Pinstripes, just like Grandpa's Sunday go-to-meeting suit. I remember standing there, holding my breath and my pee. I couldn't leave that front porch. The outhouse would just have to wait. Lord, I wouldn't have missed that first sight of my uncle for nothing on Rehoboth Road. A city man. He pulled that Cadillac right up to Grandpa's front porch. I looked at his shiny shoes first. I could see my face in them. I smiled. My eyes went slowly up his legs. They looked so long. His jacket had 1, 2, 3, let's see, 6 buttons. His shirt was white. His tie was a pinstripe, just like his suit. And then I saw his hat. I will never forget that hat. Yes, it was blue with a feather to the right. Only a city man could own a hat like that. Grandpa stood beside me. He never moved. I stepped to the right. Grandpa waited for my Uncle Buddy to walk up to him. He did. Welcome home, son. It's good to be home, Daddy Braxton. They hugged. Grandpa looked over his shoulder at the Cadillac. Nice car, boy. Oh, it ain't much. My mama ran on the front porch. Ain't much, bruh. Ain't never seen a car this fancy. Never, 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 never. Hey, sister. He smiled a big smile at Ma as she ran around his car. And then she rubbed it like it wasn't nothing but a genie bottle. She jumped in my Uncle Buddy's arms, and he hugged her like she wasn't nothing but a rag doll. Hey, bruh, that only left my grandmama to welcome Uncle Buddy home. Come on in this house, boy. I've been keeping your your breakfast warm all morning. We all followed my Uncle Buddy inside, and I saw my grandma cry for the very first time when she hugged her only boy, the one that ain't even blood kin. We ate, we laughed, we had a time, we were a family. And that was the day, in the mind of Patty Mae Shields, that Uncle Buddy arrived on Rehoboth Road. And that was the beginning of my journey to the National Book Festival, to the National Book Award, the Dred Scott King Award. It was this story, my grandmother's story, that kept my ability to write and to write 7 books after that alive. And I say that when I'm in an audience because I think it's poetic justice. I think it's reparation for a woman who could not read, could not write, and stopped school in the 2nd grade. I think it's something almost funny about her story making it to the National Mall. I think the injustice that was done to Buddy Bush, and I can tell his story over 50 years later, I just think that's his 40 acres and his mule, all packed in one. So I'm always grateful to tell the legend of Buddy Bush. And what happened next to Buddy Bush is an incredible story. The real Buddy Bush, in the real story, got away from the old Klan, just like my grandmother said. The real story actually had Hoover to send the FBI to my little town to look for Buddy Bush. In the real story, Buddy Bush was acquitted, and so were the 12 men who tried to hang him. But I'm satisfied with that because my justice is for not just African Americans, but my justice in the story is that all of those civil rights leaders that we don't know their names are in the bottom of the Mississippi River someplace. Buddy Bush got away. And that's his story, and he's sticking to it. Thank you. Okay. They made it. I'm glad you like this book, doggy. They made it very clear that they did not want me to read a long time, but they wanted me to actually talk to the audience, mainly to the young people. So we're going to do our question and answer period now. And I can tell the young lady on the front row in the green has a question. Beautiful. How are you? You have a question? No? Okay. I'm sorry? You're thinking of a question? Great. Okay. Have questions? Yes, sir. Stand up.
When does the story take place?
What's your name? Great name. The story takes place in my hometown in Rich Square, North Carolina, on Rehoboth Road. And the real story happened in the same town, but it actually happened in downtown on Main Street. But it happened in North Carolina. What grade are you in? 7th grade. All right. That's great. Next question. Yes, dear.
How did you get from telling the story to actually getting it published? What was your path to getting your grandmother's story published, your first book?
Begging and pleading.
But didn't you have a long path of preparation as a writer? I mean, how did you...
Yes.
I mean, tell this story to the young people who might want to be a writer, how you got to that point.
Yes. The process for writing, The Legend of Buddy Bush was not my first book. It was my first book of fiction that was published. Before The Legend of Buddy Bush, I wrote Dick Gregory's memoirs, Callus on My Soul. And the process is the same. You really need, and what I have been really blessed with is a great agent. You need a great agent that will sell your work for you. The worst thing you can do is represent yourself. So the process for me started with having a good agent that was willing to go the last mile for me. So you get a really good manuscript together, a good agent, and he submitted my work to Simon & Schuster. And by the grace of God, he submitted the book in January, and they bought the rights in May. And the rest was really history in the sense that Emma, who's no longer there, we have published 7 books together since 2003. So the process is long, but what I believe is that God showed me favor, because I have so many friends that have books that they wrote 10 years ago that they're still looking for an agent. So I think it goes back to Babe Jones, oh, Buddy Bush got away from the Klan and we didn't ever see him no more. I think it goes back to her carrying that story with her 2nd grade education like a guardian angel. And she flew up to Simon & Schuster on her wings and met Emma in the middle of the night and said, buy my grandchild's book. That's what really happened. I believe that. Yes, sir.
Shelia, being one of 10 kids and with grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody else who told so many wonderful stories, you must have had a tremendous amount of material around you growing up. When you write and you pull on family experiences, do you ever in your head think, now is this going to upset anybody, or is there anybody in my family that if I write it like this, they're not going to like seeing themselves there, or a story that they may have told me? What's the tension, if any, about writing stories drawn from real life, and whether you have to be careful?
Well, that's a good question. I have 9 siblings, and the best thing for them to do is be good. Be really nice to me, give me nice Christmas presents, and I will spare them the pain of being lied on, truth be told, and all of that. But basically, there's no such thing as fiction. All of my stories are a body of work of my life story, or my grandmother's, or Buddy Bush. So to answer your question, most of the names in my book are my friends or my cousin. I mean, you have Miss Dollybuck, Miss Rusaw, Miss Alberta, all the different people that are featured in my books. Those people are people that I know, Mr. Eddie, Mr. Charlie, and they are all in heaven now, but they are real people. Now, as it relates to my siblings, I think it's poetic justice that I get to talk about them and they can't do anything about it. Every now and then, my sisters will say, well, why did you tell that? But for the most part, they're okay with it. But on a different note, I also think what's really, really important, and I don't want to get too far off into this because it's too painful, but 3 months ago, my life changed in a way I never thought it would. My oldest brother, Daniel, we don't know what happened, but they believe that it was a case of robbery, and the house that I've been writing about for the last 10 years was burned. My brother was taken from that home, and he's been missing for 3 months. What's ironic about that is that the same story that I wrote 50 years ago happened to my brother. So we are a family that's right now a victim of a missing persons case. So I'm sharing that with you to say, who knew? I had not related the two to one of my fans mentioned it to me. Who knew that 50 years later, the story that I was writing about would happen to me in the very house that I used as a fictional setting? So, and I believe he's gonna, what I believe now is I just have to trust God with that situation. But as a writer, as I try to get back into the world and be normal again, as a writer, one of my friends said to me last night at dinner, I can't wait to see, she's here today, Sandy. Sandy said, I can't wait to see, we're gonna pray that your brother comes back to you, but what's the story? We have to share that story. That's your obligation as a writer. I don't know what else to do with it. You know, it's not something you get over. There's no closure. So what do you do with it? The only thing I can do is pray to my great God Almighty and write about it. That's the only thing I can do, and pray that he comes home someday. But he, the same brother, is caught in the legend of Buddy Bush. So it's just really amazing how things happen. And as a writer, your responsibility is still the same, and that is to tell the story. Yes. So thank you. Yes. I think she was first, darling. Yes, dear.
Out of all the stories your grandmother told you, why the story of Buddy Bush?
How old are you?
11.
11. That's a smart 11-year-old question. The story of Buddy Bush, I was just curious about who is Buddy Bush. Because she could tell a good Hank story. She would scare you so bad talking about ghosts, you would be afraid to go to sleep at night. But she would never let go of the story of the young man. He was only 24 when this happened. That was accused of a crime that he did not commit, and that he got away from the Klan. She loved that. She was a feisty little thing. She loved the fact that he outsmarted the Klan. She loved that story. So that's the reason it stayed with me, and it has been a catalyst really for all of my books and the awards that I have received over the years. Thank you, my queen, for that wonderful question. Thank you. Yes, dear. And what is your name?
Shadija.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
Fine.
Good.
What experiences drew you to write in the book Joseph?
Did you read Joseph? Mm-hmm. Okay. Joseph is my first contemporary book. Joseph is a young man whose mother was a drug addict. His father was away in the army, and he was fighting for his life. Joseph's responsibility was to raise himself, keep his clothes clean, and the biggest responsibility of all for Joseph was he was living in a homeless shelter. And so he had to get up every day and go to school and pretend that his life was normal. So why did I write that story? In 2005, I wrote the history book for the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. That's a remarkable organization. And they have a program called Project Success. And in that program, they actually adopt students in elementary school, and they help them through elementary school, high school, and pay for them to go to college. And Joseph is not one person. Joseph is children that the 100 Black Men of Atlanta have helped over the years, and I've been affiliated with them off and on for about 20 years. But it's also the guy next door who's raising his son alone, and the mother is not there. See, one thing that people are afraid to attack is the mother. And they talk about how bad the father is and how he's absent from the home. But Joseph's story is that my father was there for me, and my mother had a drug problem that I couldn't beat for her. So what inspired me was truth. The same thing that inspired me to tell the truth about Buddy Bush inspired me to tell the truth about Joseph. Now, people didn't like Joseph. I mean, I was like, oh my God, I could not believe it when I started getting bad reviews. And I laugh about it now, but when Joseph came out, the teachers and parents, they went on the internet. The parents were mad, and the teachers were saying, you are telling the truth. And you know the reasons the teachers knew? Because they knew Betty is the mother in the book. They know Betty. They know what it's like to call a parent, and she asked them, what are you calling me for? They know what it's like to live in fear of a parent. The teachers at Joseph's school were afraid of Betty. And this is what I believe. If you can save the parent, you can save the child. Yes, I believe that. So thank you for your question. That is the reason I wrote Joseph. Yes. Next question, yes.
Information when you were writing for Dick Gregory?
I'm sorry, my other competition is music. What's your question again?
Could you give us some insight for your writing for Dick Gregory?
Oh, wow. What a journey. It's like sitting at the master's feet. What was it like to write with Dick Gregory? Dick actually stopped by the hotel last night and spent some time with me and my friend Sandy. I told her to put on her shoes, her skates, because Dick will take you on a ride. I mean, he has every conspiracy theory in the world, and most of them are right if you live long enough. But my situation with Dick Gregory was really interesting. He said earlier that I was an agent in my other life. Dick Gregory was my client. And we had two people that were supposed to write the book. One was the great Donald Bogle, who wrote Dorothy Dandrick's book. And Donald could not do the book. And I called Dick. I said, well, Dick, we lost our author today. He said, listen, young lady, you told me you started writing at 6. Stop calling me. Write the book and call me when you're finished. Well, it was not that easy. What I had to do was shadow Dick Gregory, and this went on for about 18 months. I traveled with him to speaking engagements. He went to jail. I didn't follow him to jail. I was not that deep. I didn't need to know that much about him, but I would be there when he would get out of jail, and I just stayed with him. I stayed with the story. I wanted to know, what was it like to sit with Medgar and Martin? What was it like to walk with Coretta Scott King? And what was it like to sit on the mall in 1963 and you knew that death was all around you? And this is the difference between Dick Gregory and most civil rights leaders. He believes that the movement is still going on, and he has no fear. He's not afraid to die. So what it was like for me, it was like living. I was born in 1961. It was as if I was 40 years old, living during the movement with Dick Gregory, because the experience was incredible. Thank you. Yes. You know, he still lives here in D.C. He does. He was actually here yesterday. He was at the festival. Yes. Any more questions or comments?
If I can push you back to your agent years just briefly, you mentioned to me some of the people you worked with, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dick Gregory, some other top names. Would you like to be an agent again, or are you happy to have moved on to a whole different connection to the world of books?
Kids, close your ears. What did Celie say in The Color Purple? No, Suge say in The Color Purple? It was not a nice word, then no came out. No, I don't want to be an agent again, no. I did enjoy my time as an agent. What they did, for example, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I had an opportunity to work. I served as a liaison between Arnold and Planet Hollywood. And we worked with the inner city games, that he was the chairperson. And those type experiences, working with the young people and just seeing their faces light up when they were given a free day at the park, all the wonderful things that they had an opportunity to experience. It gave me a chance not just to work with the famous, but to go on a journey that a little girl from Rehoboth Road did not know she was going to take. So, no, I don't want to be an agent again, but it happened for a reason. I had opportunities to see Paris and see Africa, places that if I was in law school or a lawyer, which was my goal, to be a secret FBI agent, that would not have happened. But to answer your question, no way. No way, yes. Any more? Yes, sir.
Good day.
Hello, sir.
Do you see any connection between your book and what has happened last week or week before with the conviction?
Of Troy Davis?
Do you see any connection?
Do I see a connection? Sir, how I feel about the Troy Davis case is, one day, the real historians are going to have to tell the real truth about the civil rights movement. And when they do, they're going to have to talk about this real thing. They're going to have to talk about the white man that died for me. They're going to have to talk about Viola, the white lady that was shot in her head, driving in the Delta for me. This thing is bigger than color. It really is. I had a real problem with this Troy Davis case. Now, I don't want to get kicked out of Simon & Schuster tomorrow morning, but let me tell you about Troy Davis. He sat in prison 22 years. We had 22 years to march for him. You gotta be like Dick Gregory. You gotta man up. You have to man up and do the right thing, and you can't do it the night of his execution. But the same night that he died, the white gentleman was executed in Texas for dragging James Byrd to death 10 years ago. So how do I relate Troy Davis to Buddy Bush and a man that was falsely accused of a crime? We know for sure that Buddy Bush was falsely accused of a crime. The tragedy with Troy Davis is we don't know the truth. He was never given the opportunity for people to find out the truth. See, there was a man in my town called Spence Creasy. When Buddy Bush was accused of a crime, Mr. Creasy said, oh no, he was the principal. I'm not gonna stand for this. He put Buddy Bush in the backseat of his car in the middle of the night and drove him up north for his safety. Somebody should have tried to save Troy Davis 22 years ago, not when he's on his way to the electric chair. That's how I feel about it, okay? All right. Next question. Or did I just get kicked out? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Where's my time? I still have 10 minutes. Young people, we have 10 minutes left. So, I'm sorry. My classmate is here, Janice Pelham. She is so sweet, but she was not sweet in kindergarten. So, Janice, I know you have something to say about Rick Square, North Carolina, and the people there. Janice is also a assistant principal in Maryland. It's okay, Janice. Hello, Janice. Go to the mic, Janice. Okay. I'm just calling you out today, aren't I? I'm sorry. Okay.
We're from the same town. Our parents grew up together. Our brothers and sisters grew up together, and we've never lost connection. To let you know how grounded and rooted she is and how real she is. I appreciate her. I thank her. And from this day forward, I pray that you'll continue to do well in the work that God has put you here to do. And I want to get my book signed, please.
Yes, ma'am. You did buy that, didn't you? You didn't get that from my mother's house. Okay, great. Okay, the reason I wanted to point Janice out is because Janice's father, Mr. Pelham, was a legend. He's still alive, legend in my hometown. He was another person who was not afraid to stand up for right and wrong. He was not afraid to stand up for Buddy Bush. He was not afraid to beat everybody in my family, go home and tell my mother he beat us. And I think it takes a village to raise a child. I'm not surprised at all now that Janice was a teacher and became a principal, because it was in her DNA to take that legacy that her father started 50, 60 years ago and to carry the torch. So we talk about Troy Davis, we can talk about Buddy Bush, you know, we can make our mouth say anything, but you gotta be Mr. Creasy, you gotta be like John Pelham, you gotta be willing to go the extra mile, you know, because again, you know, the rest of it is really lip service. So as a writer, what I try to do is not be afraid to tell the truth. And all of my great reviews, some of them turned to bad reviews when I wrote Joseph, but I wasn't writing for the critics. I was writing for the little girl who didn't have supper when she got home that evening, and her mother was somewhere smoking a pipe. I was not writing to make Daddy happy. I was making sure that Daddy paid his child support. So we have to stand up and fight and save our children, the children that are talking in the back right now. We have to stand up and save our children. Next question. Yes, dear. And my good friends from Texas are here, too. I know they have something to say. Yes. John and Teresa, thank you for coming.
Hi,
yes, dear.
I'm the mother of a 10-year-old sitting right in front. So the question that I'm going to ask, I'm sure many mothers have this question, and the answer coming from someone from you will go a long way. Kids today, on the one hand, have a High School Musical, iCarly, Disney Channel, and something that they need to prove in school to their classmates that they are part of that group. On the other hand, there is the deep literature and books that they want to get into, they need to get into.
Yes.
So how would you explain the depth of what they need to find out by reading books, by being open to new ideas and all of that?
Okay. My first question would be, does your mother read? Does your father read? That's my first question. Does your mother read? Does your father read? If you can save the parent, you can save the child. You know, there was a time, I'm 50 years old, and, you know, I was raised under the law, do as I say, not as I do. And it really worked in the 60s and 70s. That does not work now. The TV is raising our children. They know who Barney is. They know who SpongeBob, is that his name? But do they have the book? The thing people don't understand about the cartoon characters, all of those SpongeBob and all of those people, they are actually adapted from a book. And you are so quick to go and buy the DVD and the tapes for them to see the cartoons so that the TV can babysit for you, but why don't you purchase the book for them? So the answer to your question, dear mother, the answer is, if you read, your child will read. Let me tell you, I was not in love with writing. I fell in love with reading first. My mother, Mayless Moses, is 85 years old now. She'll be mad that I told her age, but Mama, you look 70. Mother read the newspaper every day. We could not afford the newspaper. The neighbor would give my mother, on Saturday, he would give her Friday's paper. On Sunday, he gave her Saturday's paper. So we were always reading the news a day late. But she would read that newspaper, and she would put it back together so nice and neat, and she would let another child read it, and we loved to read. So my first words probably was, "You've been busted," something I saw on the paper. I was always reading it, criminal justice, whatever was happening, whatever crime happened in town, I wanted to read and know what was in that paper that my mother was reading. So that's what I saw every day. So I was not allowed to come home and turn the TV on and watch what I wanted to watch, but I could read that paper. And till this day, my mother, at 85, she reads the newspaper every day, and you better not touch it until after she read it. That was 50 years ago, and she's still the same way. So to answer your question, read to your child. You're doing the right thing today. You're here at the National Book Festival with her, so you are already on the right road. So thank you. Okay. Yes.
I have a question. With the advent of a lot of newspapers closing, the internet, as a writer, I find that the reading materials are starting to change. What would you suggest to a writer, you know, how to deal with, you know, the number of printed materials are becoming less and less, and we're coming into a new age. Do you have any information or any suggestions about writing in the new age?
Well, that's a hard question because I don't know what's going to happen next. The internet, ebook, all of the new ways to get information to people, newspaper, online, you know, it is very painful. Let me tell you, the internet is doing to writers what reality TV is doing to a really good actress. That's the reason the soap operas are dying, because of reality TV. It's the same thing for writers. So what I encourage you to do is start writing and never lose your integrity as a writer, but write things that fit for what they're looking for on the internet. They want a shorter story. They want something more contemporary. They don't want the legend of Buddy Bush online, but they want Joseph because that's contemporary. We're just going to have to catch up. We're going to have to color our hair like I did before I came here today, and we're going to have to catch up. We're just going to have to catch up with the young folks. Make sense? All right. Yes, darling. Yes, good.
I first want to say just thank you for taking our young people seriously. I've been working with youth for about 15 years, specifically with middle school girls in Southeast DC the last 7. And what I see so many of our young people facing is that each one of them has a story to tell. And I think we as a broader society and as adults teach them not to tell those stories. We teach them shame in their own experiences and to keep those things to themselves. And so I'm just interested in your thoughts on how we as the village can create a space where young people can tell their stories and be heard, and what thoughts you have for our kids who are here today about how to maintain that connection to themselves and their experiences.
Well, I think what's really important is, you live here in D.C.?
Yeah.
Take them to the Library of Congress. Mm-hmm. I think what you have to do is create book clubs. And you would be surprised in Atlanta and many other inner city schools that children, the only books they see are the books, their textbooks. You have to encourage their mothers, back to the parents, to not buy the video game, but buy them a book. Mm-hmm. Since you are in the education field, just help them to create their own community. Look at the young people that are here today. So it's not true that they all are being raised by the TV. So my encouragement for you is, just like there are adult book clubs, create book clubs for children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, hello, handsome. How are you?
Good, thank you.
All right. What's your question?
I wanted to ask if the teachers ask their students to read your book, because it's really interesting.
Ask me that question again. I'm old. I didn't understand.
If the teachers ask their students to read your book, because it's really interesting.
Oh, what's your name?
Amadou. Amadou.
Amadou?
Yeah.
What a great name, Amadou. It sounds very presidential. Wow. Okay. Yes, come closer. Yes, Amadou. I like you because you want the teachers to read my books. Amadou, the answer to your question is yes. The reason I'm here today is because of teachers and the media specialists who continue to purchase my books for young people just like you. And if you would come to the tent after the signing, I would like to give you a book as a gift. Is that okay? All right. But yes, the answer to your question is yes. I believe that my time is up. I love people who read and write. I love this festival. I believe that God has shown me favor, that I'm here today for the 3rd time. I encourage you to continue to raise your children in a way that they can ask bright questions like the young people did today. And I encourage you to keep buying books and cheering them on, that this festival will live on for the next 50 years for the sake of our children. I love you, and I, again, thank you for coming out today. God bless you. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.